So we would like to welcome you to this webinar. This is an absolute thrill for Janet and Kara and I to be able to have this conversation with you. And World Childless Week, I think, is something that means so much to all of us. You just had a chance to hear from Stephanie Phillips, and Stephanie's the one that started this in 2017, and it's amazing to think of where it was and how absolutely massive it's been. The most important part about World Childless Week is this thing right here, is the resources and the opportunity to interact with each other. And so Stephanie has come up with a whole list of webinars, and our particular webinars, we're going to be talking about something that brings a ton of joy and a ton of heartbreak, which is being a childless step parent. So want to thank Stephanie for allowing us to do this and have these conversations. So we're going to start off by introducing, I'm going to let Janet and Kara go first. So Kara, do you want to kind of introduce yourself, and then we'll get into the topics?
Absolutely, happy to. So as the screen projects, I'm based in West Michigan, over here, Eastern time zone. So hi to everyone shouting out from New York and Ohio and all the other Eastern time zone states. A little bit of a background about me. I had suffered from unexplained infertility for years and years. My ex-husband and I started trying around 2002. Until about 2005, 2006, and then we experienced multiple miscarriages, basically back to back, 2006 and 2007. Soon after the last miscarriage, divorced. I remarried in 2014, and with that marriage came a stepdaughter who was 6 going on 7, and she is now 16. So that's a little bit of my background. So angel mama and bonus mama, and riding the waves that come along with both.
Great. Thank you. Janet, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. I have been married to Randy for about 14 years. We live in East Texas, so we're about 45 minutes west of Shreveport and only 3.5 hours from Sandy, which is really nice, close.
Yes.
About 4 years into our marriage, we started trying to do IVF and several different types of fertility treatments. I ended up miscarrying twice, and it was a brutal time. It's very hard. The stepmom situation when I married in, my stepchildren are over 4 and 8 years old. So I've been part of their life for a really long time. And I think what's so amazing about being able to do this call 5 years after meeting Kara and Sandy is when I met them, I was at a real pivotal time and incredibly depressed and felt very alone. And this has been meeting them really pivoted the healing process. And it's been a lot of work, but I like where I'm at now. And I'm grateful to be able to be on this call. And hopefully people can listen to me and have hope that you can heal. And even though the triggers, they change, things get different, it doesn't hurt as much.
Awesome. So thank you, Janet. So I'm Sandy Michelet. I've been married for 23 years. Absolutely incredible man. I have 2 stepkids who are 34 and 33. My experience has actually been very good with my stepkids. I still definitely have those triggers that I think we all have that kind of make us go, whoa, what did I just hear? What just happened? But I've been very blessed to be in their lives. About 5 or 6 years ago, right before I met Janet and Kara, I started the website, thechildlesslife.com, and then the subsequent Facebook group, thechildlesslife.com. And that Facebook group is chatter nonstop, constant. I love it because with the website, it was me talking. With the Facebook group, it's everybody talking. And there's a lot of conversation throughout the year. Obviously, there are times throughout the year where chatter's a lot more, but it's a safe space just like this is. And the emotion is raw, and it's rough, and it's beautiful, and it's supportive. And that's really what we want. So what we're gonna do is talk through. I'm a nerd. Okay, so just let's get that out there. I'm a nerd, and so I like graphics. And so Janet and Kara and I met several years ago, and we're going to actually talk about that in a minute. But we met on Friday. What we wanted to do was think, what are the kind of those big chunks that we want to make sure that we talk about? This is a conversation that the three of us are having with you. And to do that, we want to hear from you. So the chat is open. We'd love to hear your thoughts about what we're talking about. And also there, the Q&A, as Stephanie mentioned, if you want to ask a question or ask us to dive deeper into something, you can get into the Q&A. We can do that as well. The three of us are pretty open, and we'll let you know if there's something we don't want to talk about. But if you ask a question, even if it's a hard one of us will answer it, I feel certain. So we're going to talk, starting off with the support network and the power of the support network, talk about understanding the role, the couple relationship, because that can get you. And then the expectations and emotions that we all go through. And then we're going to wrap it up with positive parenting techniques. So that is my one graphic that we have. I'm hoping that everybody can see that graphic, but still see all of our faces. So I'm going to turn it back over to Janet and Kara. And my first question to you is, we met 5 years ago or so, actually through Jody Day's Reignite Weekend that was hosted in Baton Rouge, actually at my home. And that I had the opportunity to go to Pasadena that year and went through a Reignite Weekend. And the moment I walked into that room, the power of that room was unbelievable. And in talking with Jody, that was something that we actually wanted to bring to the United States. And we did that 5 years ago. And Janet and Kara attended the very first, or I guess the second session in the United States. So Janet and Kara, why don't you Janet, why don't you go first and talk about the importance of that day and the importance of how building a support network ties into all of that?
I think the biggest part of going through something like this is not a lot of people talk about not being able to have children. There's a lot of shame, I think, that a lot of women feel. And even though I don't think I was afraid of talking about it, the part where there was a whole nother layer was being a stepmom and trying to figure out where you fit in that mix. And some of the challenges that I was coming up with were completely different than anybody that I had that were friends or family members that did not have children could not relate to. They try. I have some wonderful, wonderful people in my life and some wonderful support systems, but I didn't feel seen. I didn't feel heard. And when I saw your post, I don't even know how I saw it. I don't know if it was on the website or whatnot, but it was immediately I paid the money and I made the plans to go. I didn't tell anybody I was doing it. I literally, this is what I'm doing. So walking in, I felt seen and heard immediately. And I think out of the group that we had, I want to say 75 to 80% were all stepmoms. And so the conversations that we had were applicable to what I was going through. And I suddenly didn't feel so alienated and so different. So I think that was probably the biggest part. And I think the biggest thing for me too is over the past 5 years is we didn't stop connecting. Being able to utilize your website as a tool has been great. The chat has been incredible. I've gone through different seasons of where certain things are more painful than others. I feel like I've gone through some of the, maybe now that the kids are out of high school, it's changing. It's not without the triggers, but it's different now. But now it's being able to even pick up the phone. I had some stuff come up this last year that was just that blindsided me, and being able to have that network to be able to call, and nobody else in my life could have possibly have understood better than the two of you. So making those connections was huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. And Sandy, I'll take you a step back. Janet, you weren't in the picture at this point in time, but my journey with the healing started about 2014 when Jody published her first edition of the book. And then the Not Mom Summit came up in Cleveland. And it was one of those things where it was close to my hometown, so I felt comfortable going on my own. I didn't know what to expect, but during one of the breakout sessions, Sandy, you handed me a Kleenex, a tissue, And it was more about, I think that breakout session was about building your tribe and realizing the women in your life who you could connect to. And I'll never forget that moment. And then after that, just keeping an eye on what Jody was doing with Gateway Women and seeing the Reignite weekend. Yes, I had to travel, and that was completely fine, to come down to Louisiana to be with you. And it was life-changing. At the Not Mom Summit, one of the things that really hit me and probably helped me continue the journey was the fact, I think this happened by circumstance. Everybody at my table, when we initially sat down, we were all stepmothers. We were all very quiet, all very pensive and apprehensive because we didn't know if we would be accepted at this conference. And that was one thing where my eyes were really wide open with regard to child-free versus childless. And it's okay, we can help each other in this journey. And from there on out, I became fairly vocal about being childless, not by choice. But having the two of you as my support system has been just priceless. My husband is completely supportive of my journey, but he understands he has a child. He can't fully empathize. So while I think he is a little sad that he can't be that go-to for me, he really does respect my need to have the support. Yeah, because I don't know what I would have done without the two of you.
Ditto,
Wow.
my dear.
Back at you. So that you're right. And I'm seeing some things, we're getting some things coming in the chat, and then we're getting some private ones, but there are so many different layers to, and Jody does this. So she is just a genius. She does this so beautifully in her book, where she talks about the ways that you can become a childless person, but then also she talks about the different layers and the different levels of it. And you can be, you're childless as we all are, childless step parent, but there are some reasons, there are various levels in that, and we're getting people kind of sending us private messages about things, but there's so many different aspects of it. And I think that the beauty of a network like this is that you can find people that are like you, and that you feel comfortable, like being a step parent. You're right. I mean, it is very difficult. And I saw, Helen, that you posted something that, it's extremely difficult if you go to an event and you are the only childless step parent, because as much as we want to have empathy, we can't if we haven't, been in there. So we talked about building a support role, the support network. Let's talk about the actual, understanding what that role looks like. And this is kind of trying to figure out who you are as a childless step parent. Like, what does that actually look like? What do those boundaries look like? Are you included in events that are going on? Are you not included in events? And how do you communicate about that? So I'm gonna ask the question to Janet and Kara. I'm gonna pose this to you guys about, have there been situations where you feel that you have, in trying to understand your role, that you kind of felt like an outsider, maybe even in your own home or even in events maybe that you've planned? Do either of you want to take that question?
I'll
Kara,
take it.
you go first.
I'll take it. And I will preface it in saying,
Sure.
I think I am very fortunate and lucky having the background that I have, because I have two amazing step parents of my own who I would not trade for the world. I have a wonderful supportive stepfather who I grew up with, and a supportive stepmother who I grew up with. So early on, I've known the lines. I've known that I'm not my stepdaughter's mother. I don't need to be. She has a mom. She has a really good mom. We all get along really well. It's a really great relationship, but there are times, kind of like what Janet was saying, as my stepdaughter's getting older, it is getting easier trigger wise. When she was younger, the biggest things for me might have been school events or soccer in particular. She spends a majority of her time with us. And so just going to a game or to an event and seeing her not looking for me. You know, she's scanning the crowd, but it's not for me. Those, you know, those were hard times and really triggering times. And the more, I think even just since Friday, since the three of us connected, I'm thinking about these things more and more. And I think they really triggered the fact of what I was missing out on, because she is, and I think this is in my bio, she is the same age as my kiddos would have been. Today is actually one of my due dates. So I'm going to try to hold it together today. So just wondering if, when my kids have been on her soccer team, would I have, you know, would they have been friends? Like, all of the what ifs were really triggering. And I felt a part of it, but not, wasn't hers. I'm not her mom. So it's a different dynamic for sure.
It's heavy, isn't it, Kara?
It's very heavy. And as much as I want to say it's getting easier, I have all of the future things that are coming up with prom, with senior nights, with sporting events. I'm just wondering who's going to be walking on the field. Weddings, babies. She's going to want her mom. And I don't blame her. And I value her relationship with her mom. But those are all the things that they're not even happening yet. And I'm still already worried about them. So it's just something that never happens with a first traditional family, the things you have to worry about. So
I had a little different situation. We didn't have the kids, the traditional split 50-50. I think that would have been wonderful. We didn't. It was the every other weekend in the summertime. The challenge, I think, you know, I'm sitting here listening to you talk, and it's often the past 5 years I've even been jealous of you because you've been able to have so much more of an influence in your stepdaughter's life, and you guys have had such a different relationship. There's no animosity, like outward animosity with our situation. I think it's almost that it's nobody talks. There's no conversation. It's so it leaves me to think about a lot of things in my head and make up stories because I'm really good at that. If I don't actually have facts that I am hearing or hearing somebody say, I'm really good at making up stories. But the hard part, I think, is when these pivotal events happen, like the school events, the graduations. It's painful. Like I get to sit on the sidelines and watch. And I was part of some of the most, you know, being the fact that these kids were 4 and 8, I did have a really special influence. And I think the hard part is that my behavior and how we have chosen to raise the kids was to always be respectful of the other side, to not talk negatively, even though we were frustrated or the adult conversations did not trickle down to the kids as they were kids. It wasn't appropriate. I'm not their mom. They have a wonderful mom. Their mom loves them very, very much. So it's not, there was not the I think competition from my side, but there's these things where I feel on a regular basis excluded and not important, and almost like I don't have an advocate for me. I wish that that situation could have been different. I wish that I'd had an advocate. I guess that would be the word I was looking for, to be able to say, hey, no, that's probably not right. You know, maybe we should work this out, but instead it doesn't get discussed. And I end up getting blindsided on a regular basis. It does happen. And I think where I am learning is I have to take care of myself first, because I'm realizing that nobody else is going to do it. I don't have a horrible family. I've got a wonderful husband. I've got great stepkids. It's different than what I would have liked. I wish that it could have been different, but what do? You know? So I'm not even sure what the question was.
No, I think you make a good point, because it all does circle back in when we're going through those moments now, we have people to rely on. It makes going through those triggering moments. And even if I'm on the field, I can whip out my phone and text y'all.
And I did.
And know that I'm not alone. And to me, that means I can bring a better self to my family. That
Absolutely.
means I don't hold grudges. That means, you know, I'm able to be heard and felt and supported from the right people who understand.
We're being able to be advocates for each other, I think, is
Right.
where it may not translate into the actual situations that we're having to encounter, but feeling heard, and that what's going through my mind and the stories I'm telling myself are not necessarily that far-fetched, like that, maybe that probably should not have happened to me, that it's kind of sucks, but you know what, why are we there? Okay, what's the main focus? What are we going to do to take care of ourselves in this situation? And having that support system has been truly what has saved me.
Mhm. Yeah. And on the flip side with that, I think so many people presume when you're a childless step parent, all you're going to do is complain and vent and bitch. I want to be able to brag. I want to be able to gloat, and I want to be able to say how proud I am. And sometimes you can't do that with other parents because, well, she's not yours.
Right.
You know, you can't take credit. You can't be as proud. So I think it goes both ways. And so the fact that we can share their wins and we can have pride and be boastful, that's wonderful too.
And it's interesting that you say that about wanting to brag, because I have had well-meaning, very, very well-meaning family members and friends go, well, you're a mom. No, I'm not. Like, no. And I've had to really kind of stand my ground on this because they have a mom. The hard part has been trying to figure out where my role is, I think. And now that I'm 14 years into this, I'm realizing that I have to be advocate for myself, but I also not to be ashamed that I'm a stepmom. I'm proud. I'm proud of my behavior. I'm proud. Have I made mistakes? Yes, absolutely. Have I been well-intentioned? I feel like I've come from a place of the best place I could possibly come from. And I'm proud of how I've handled some of these situations, even though they've been extremely painful. But I'm proud of my kid, the kiddos. I'm proud of them, and they're part of my family. So I think we have to just own that.
That I love what you guys are saying when you're kind of talking about the empathy aspect, because the one thing that I've noticed that in talking with other people that are childless, step parents or not, talking about childless, is that if you're talking with someone who has children and you're telling them about childlessness, it's almost like they want to fix it for you. And I'm like, well, if a team of a gazillion doctors can't fix it, I certainly don't think that you can. But I don't need you to solve this problem. If I want to talk about this, I just want to talk about it. I want somebody else to go back and say, here on the other line, God, that sucks. Hey, what are you doing this weekend? Like, that's what I want. I don't need you to solve my problem for me. And that, I think, is the beauty of kind of, having people in our lives that are childless. But regarding kind of that finding your role, I've been married 23 years, and Craig and I were together a couple of years before that. I have been very, very lucky. And when it comes to, being a childless step parent, if you call Brant and Erica, those are my stepkids right now. If you call them right now and you say, tell me about your parents, they're going to tell you about all three, their dad, their mom, and me. And when we went to events, it was the three of us. The three of us got along. My husband's ex-wife and I are very close. We're very close friends. She called me. I was telling Janet, she called me two Saturdays ago, and she's like, hey, I'm getting ready to retire, and I want to do a birthday party and a retirement party, and I want you to throw it for me. And I was thinking about doing it at your house, but I don't know if I want to do. And I'm like, and I'm telling my friends this, and they're like, that's the weirdest thing ever. I'm like, that's the most amazing, perfect thing ever. And I was like, damn straight, I'm going to help you plan your party. I'll plan it for you. And that relationship with her is what has allowed the kids to, for all of us to have that relationship. And I am a child of divorce, and both of my parents remarried. And I remember hearing things like, well, if you have children of your own, that's a new family. You need to remember those are a separate family, and you don't need to have anything to do with this family. Your old family, meaning Brant and Erica, and then your new family, your baby. And I was like, no, we're all one up in here. Like, we want to, that wouldn't work. That wouldn't work for us. And, those expectations of people on the outside saying that this is what a family's supposed to be like. Well, there are how many people are on here? There are 39 participants. There's 39 different definitions of what a family looks like. And so I think we need to get over that aspect.
Yeah. I think for me, can I interject just real quick?
Please.
One thing that the relationship that I have with my husband's ex-husband has obviously, transitioned over the course of time, but we've always gotten along really well. And the thing that's interesting for us is when we we do things together, we show up at events for my stepdaughter together, we have to teach the parents, the teachers, the coaches that it's okay that we're all getting along. Like, they have this presumption that there's contention, that we should be bickering, that there should be some infighting. And no, we're going to be bringing each other bottles of wine, or no, we're going to hop in the same car to go to the team breakfast. And so a lot of the shift of the dynamic with us is, I think as a team, we have to teach others that it's okay that we're all getting along.
Yeah. Because because there's no drama in people getting along. It's so much easier to, people have that expectation that people are going to fight and hate each other. And I'm like, well, okay. Well, Don and I just went to the mall last weekend and we were looking for shoes. I realize that that's not, I don't want to say normal, but that works for us, and it doesn't work for others. So, okay. So I want to, let's keep going. So I am sure that no one on this call has ever had any challenges on the next topic, which is strengthening the couple relationship. So I've never had children myself, but I know the challenges of what I think is right for a kid that's in my house and what my husband thinks is right for a kid in my house. When Craig and I both, we got married, when we got married years and years ago, we had to go through something through our church to ask us questions about what we would do if, this particular situation. Well, one of the questions was, well, what are you going to do if you find out that you can't have children? Do you know what your partner would do? And both of us put, yep, we know. Well,
Wow.
then when it was impressive, Janet Glaze, until we got in the car and we were like, oh, heck no, we thought we knew. And we were like, what do you mean? He said, well, we wouldn't have kids. And I'm like, no, we would adopt. We would try. And he's like, I'm like, oh my gosh. So that's a big old challenge. So what I'm interested to hear, kind of for the attendees, from the participants, what challenges have you guys had? Put those in the chat or in the questions. And then Janet and Kara, we've talked about this a lot. I mean, let's talk about that. Those challenges of what that can do to a marriage or to a coupleship. Like, y'all talk about that, a partnership. Who wants to take that one first?
Yeah, I'll go first again, unless you want to, Janet.
No, go ahead.
But I think I struggled with this a lot early on. And it's so very funny to me now that I'm thinking about it a little bit more. It was actually a conversation I had with a longtime boyfriend ago. And he said something along the lines of, well, how do you think that Harry, my stepdad, would have reacted? Basically, a lot of my growing up as a stepmom has to do with relating back to what my stepparents did for me. And so with that reminder of, oh, he never treated me any different, or, oh, he supported me and did all the things that he needed to do as a parent, and why don't I step up and do the same thing? That was really key and pivotal for somebody just to remind me of, it doesn't have to be this, I don't know, this toxic kind of just coming into it and thinking I need to change it all up. Having said that, my role in the house, I think first and foremost, she knows that I'm not trying to be her mom. I'm not her aunt, I'm not her friend. It is a different, unique relationship that we have. Before her teenage years kicked in, we used to have hour upon hour long conversations and heart to hearts. And I'm one of the few people that will tell her no. I will be very frank with her and kind of give her an outside viewpoint of, well, this is why I'm saying what I'm saying. Not necessarily as a parent who birthed you, but as somebody who loves you and wants to take care of you. So there's a lot of that in our relationship. I've also learned that one of my biggest roles is just to be a support to my husband. He takes a lot on. He's an active father. He's one of those that would be one of the only dads dropping off, picking up, being at school functions and whatnot. And a lot of times I think he felt like he was going at it alone. So my role, focusing on us also as a couple, which kind of makes me think of, unlike first families, we never really dated. We never had the couple. We didn't get to know each other, just the two of us without her. So only now that we're 10 years in, we're starting to try to, rekindle, okay, let's do the dating.
Yeah.
Let's spend quality time. Let's be intentional about creating this couple. So it's been interesting and fun and intimidating for sure, because it seems like we were instant family and now we're trying to reconnect to create the couple bond that would have been there in a traditional family.
And we've got some private chats here. And so I'm trying to kind of pull in some of these things. Either Kara or Janet, when you kind of answer that same question, one of the things that used to come up a lot was finances. And we've got some private chats coming in there about finances, that it's hard enough having someone else in your home trying to figure out how to spend money. And then you're like, whoa. How is this? Financially, this is a huge financial responsibility. Like, can you talk about that a little bit? Are either of you comfortable talking about that one?
I'm comfortable talking about it. I think what early on I think saved me was not having joint incomes or joint checking accounts. So I made sure I was working full time. I had a great salary of my own. So I had my own account. He had his own account, and then we had sort of a joint account. But being able to have that sort of control over my own finances saved me, because there was a lot of frustration as far as what was being paid out to the other family and child support. It was a huge strain, huge issue. And at the end of the day, I think, Kara, something you said about with your husband learning that you needed to be able to be a support for him. It's hard, because I think on one hand, as a woman of your household, there are certain things that you would be okay with and not be okay with. And when you're interacting, but realizing at the end of the day, these are not my children per se. How do I support my husband in the process? But I will tell you, it was one of the loneliest, most frustrating, most alienating experiences I have ever been through. I like being married much more now than I had. It was hard. It's kind of a miracle we've gone through, and we got through this together. I sometimes wonder how I'm grateful I didn't give up. I think at the end of the day, I'm being able to see the sweetness, being able to see things differently as I've gone through the healing process, and not, I tell myself less stories in my head. So it does make it a little easier, and try and take more of an observation route. But it's been incredibly lonely, incredibly frustrating. But the boundaries with the finances is what I've realized, is that I cannot control. Sandy, you and I share a little bit of that. Like, we want to own everything in our household with this stuff, but being able to have him have his own account gave him really the freedom I think he needed. I needed to be okay with him being able to make decisions that I'm not really comfortable with, but he needs to be able to make them as a dad. So my job now is to be able to support him. Even I still say how I think and what I feel, and I still encourage some things that maybe he wouldn't have seen before. Like, maybe you should do this. Maybe you should help out with this. Maybe you should get this for the holidays. Maybe you should get this for Christmas, I'm trying to help do that support on that end. But I'm not going to lie, it's been I'm jealous of the two of you in a lot of ways, because you've had such a much better situation, and mine hasn't been bad. On the outside, it looks completely fine. But I think the internal journey that I've gone through, and feeling minimized with my role, it's and not as important as far as the impact that I wanted to be able to have a positive impact and be acknowledged for that. I'm not going to get that from the other side the way I wanted to. Now I take little wins and I celebrate, and I'm getting a better relationship with my stepdaughter now that she's graduated. I'm getting to see her more than I did when she was in high school. I'm so proud of her. I'm getting to watch her grow into this beautiful young woman, and I'm enjoying it better now than I was. So I guess there's hope. So it does get better, but it's hard.
Yeah. What about and I don't know that we've ever talked about this piece, is that when you guys were actively trying to get pregnant, what was the relationship with the with the stepchildren. My kids never knew. My
We didn't
stepkids
tell
never,
anybody.
yeah.
I think we didn't even tell his family when I miscarried. I don't know why we didn't, but his family was not very like, his mom, dad, sister. It was very lonely. Of course,
Yeah.
my family was very, very involved, but that was just the dynamics of his family. But I went through a lot of that alone. So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but
No, it did. Yeah. I don't know that we've ever talked about kind of with the kids. Kara?
So Kevin and I never actively tried. In the beginning, I think it was mutual. We have had conversations of, well, if we had met when we were younger, when we were, earlier. But by the time I met him, and after all of my infertility treatment for the years and years and years that I did it before with my ex-husband, I was pretty much spent as far as emotional, financial, just mental capacity to think about trying again. There was one circumstance when we talked to my stepdaughter about the possibility of bringing a baby and kind of just, well, maybe fostering or what would happen. But she was of the age of, she wanted to be an only, and why not? And so she had, and she was a toddler, so she had a tantrum, but to not take that personally was so unbelievably hard, because it wasn't about me or my needs. It was just a little girl that didn't want to, share. But so we have never actively tried. And I don't, even now, given the age I am, would it be smart to even, no, it's out of the realm of possibility now. Now it's the acceptance that I will never be.
Yeah. What if you had to give, and we're still kind of in that couple relationship, if you had to give advice to someone or to yourself years ago, what advice would you give to yourself if you were meeting someone that had stepkids or that had kids and you were like, man, this guy or gal seems awesome, they've got kids? I mean, what would you think differently now? Like, how would you?
yeah, my first thought is don't do it. It's brutal, but it's I think going into it, I was so Susie Sunshine. I mean, I've gotten along with everybody my entire life. How bad could it be?
Yeah.
I think, a lot of what I think hurts is unmet expectations. I think when you get married to somebody and they have children, and there's the hallmark persona of what happens when the stepmom comes in, or you see the the negative Hollywood approach to what stepmoms, how they're treated in the family. And I'm like, I'm nothing like that. I'm kind, I'm sympathetic, I've I would want to embrace these children into my life as if they were my own, even though they're not. But be able to do that. I'm thinking these kids, it's a great experience. It's going to be wonderful. It was not wonderful, and I think the hardest part was my expectations of how it was going to be. So if you did decide to go through with it, I think my advice would be to get help early on, and to get help to have the hard conversations. And I think part of it is my husband, I didn't know how to have those hard conversations. I mean, I think there's, one side note, I don't have mom guilt. That is the one good thing that I don't have to deal with, is I don't have parental guilt. And when I spend time with my stepdaughter, I told her this a long time ago. I said, I don't have mommy guilt. And she goes, rude. I said, no, it's not rude. Look, think about it this way. Everything I do for you is because I want to. I do this because I want to spend time with you. I do this. I buy this because I want you to have it, because I love who you are, and I don't feel guilty. To me, that's amazing. I don't want to do anything out of guilt. But my husband, I did not know how to have those conversations early on. And it was where he would almost he'd shut down, because I don't think he knew how to have the conversations. And he was still dealing, he hasn't dealt with divorced, the reasons for the divorce and why they separated to begin with. It's going to trickle into your marriage, whether you want to it or not. I'm not that, I'm special, but I'm not that special to have that to be avoided.
Awesome,
right?
but yeah.
I thank you ever so. But counseling, therapy is huge, but it's got to be in a way that it doesn't, that's healthy. And what I ended up having to do later on, I think, was what saved us, was I started having to really have the hard conversations with myself and start doing a lot of inner work. And the more I started to heal, the more we started to heal. I feel like a little unfair since I had to do a lot of the hard work. It's kind of a joke now, but I was a little bit resentful that I'm like, why am I having to do all the work? But one of you has to do the work. It has
Yeah.
to, because you can't be unhealed and be unhealthy and have a healthy marriage and a healthy relationship. Things are much better now, but they were brutal. They were very hard on me emotionally for the first many, many, many years.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
my one piece of advice to myself or to anyone else would be slow down. Absolutely slow down. We talk about that we did get married too quickly because it was the right thing to do. Would we still be married today? Probably, but we would have gone slower. We would have, yeah, I'm the one that's learning how to have those tough conversations because I'm not a talker to begin with. I don't like conflict. It's funny, I'm an attorney, I don't like conflict. Not with the important people in my life. And to know boundary setting ahead of time. I think setting expectations of how the house is, I mean, just little things, how the house is going to be run, who's going to be able to walk through the door without knocking, who's going to do X, Y, Z, what are the expectations of me, of him. But yeah, definitely slowing down. And I think to a certain extent, like I said, like we were instant family and now we're trying to form our couple relationship. I think that becoming a couple and building that foundation before you jump into living together or a marriage or whatnot, long-term commitment is super important because here we are a year and a half, 2 years from now, it is going to be us. And so where does that leave us once she's off to college? We still have to have that foundation together. And I'm glad that we're making a really good team and we're making a really good go of it, but it's taken years.
It is so crazy to hear you say something as simple as, who are we going to allow to walk in the front door without knocking? And wow, because that is such a cool thing that you don't talk about. You don't talk about little minor things like that that can actually become something kind of big. I remember a couple of years ago, they now at this point, and we're actually going to talk about, kind of as we age, what this means, but that my stepson's girlfriend had a child, and my stepson's girlfriend and her child came. I was in the back of the house and they came and jumped in bed with me and were watching TV, and they were just kind of roaming around. Well, I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. I'd never had my stepson's girlfriend jump in and I'm like, is this okay? Like, is this what people do? Because I'm like, I don't know how old I was at that point. I'm like, and I literally I've got a group of 3 guy friends and they've all got kids and there's 3 of us and me. It's weird. But I texted them. I was like, do not make fun of me. Like, my soul is open right now. Do people do this? Because we didn't do that when I was a kid. And they were like, no. And they, to their credit, they were like, no, that's cool. That's good. That's good. That's good. But it's little things like that you don't realize, that you don't know until it happens. And it seems like it's such a stupid thing. I would only tell this group here that because do people do that? Well, yeah, they do it. I just didn't know that. Yeah, see, Mary's like, yeah, we got to talk about the front door. I never thought about that. So we had some questions about, one of them was, do all of you get along with your biological parent? And then would you say that the partner's behavior towards the childless one is a good relationship towards, with the step parent and the ex-partner? And I think we've kind of weaved into that, but I mean, it as a quick aside, I absolutely, Donna and I are very, very good friends. And the respect that she has for me is like no other. She has allowed me to love her children, and she is so appreciative of that. And she will call me and defer to me on some things. And she's like, girl, I don't know. What do you think? And I love that. So yes, for me. Kara, what about you? I mean, do you get along? And then how important is the partner's behavior?
We definitely do get along. We don't hang out like you. Having said that, while I was going through my divorce, it's such a small town here that I would hang out with her, or him, depending on the night. And what's the second part of the question? What's his view?
No, is that the partner's behavior towards the childless one is a key. Would you say that the partner's behavior toward the childless one is key to the good relationship with the step parent, the stepchildren and ex-partner?
I would think it's key. Like, my relationship with him is definitely key on my stepdaughter and how it affects how she treats me. But I think that runs across the board with regard to how she would treat anyone, is the relationship that he has with her. I don't know if we have a unique situation, but my stepdaughter and my husband are two peas in a pod, and they are so similar that it is often really humorous to watch. And sometimes that's when I feel ostracized and isolated, because yeah, daddy's little girl. And I love watching it, which was part of the appeal of when I met him and I saw him raising this little girl. And I had always said with my ex-husband, I want a child. It doesn't have to be mine. Yeah, I just want a baby, I just want to raise a child. It doesn't have to be mine. And so I got my wish. I put it out in the universe, so I got it. But sometimes, because the relationship is so close, that I do feel a little isolated. But no, we're so lucky compared to so many other blended families, that even the little points of contention that we have, I think they're just typical, and you just have to ride those bumps.
So we've got about probably 6 or 7 minutes.
Sandy, I can answer that question too, if that works.
Yeah, please.
One of the things I think that has been pivotal in my healing is there's a quote, and it's by the Four Agreements, and there's a line in there. I'm paraphrasing, but it's that nothing anybody does is because of us. So learning that not to take everything personal. That has been one of my hardest lessons in this life, is to learn not to take things personal. With that being said, I would say that the relationship is cordial with the other side. I wish that it had been different. I wish that we could have had this kumbaya, this even just meeting of the minds, even just to have felt included in the process. And if anything, I've probably felt invisible most of the time, and kind of a stand-in sometimes. I'm there to kind of support Randy, but I don't get to really feel like I get to be part of it. Again, I didn't want to be their mom. That was never it. It's just to be able to be included in the role that I do have, is to love on them and take care of them and give them the best environment I can when they're with their dad. So I wish that it could have been different. But I don't expect a phone call on a Saturday morning to help plan a party from her. So I wish I would do it though. But
well, you're so awesome. You would help me plan Donna's. So
I probably would actually.
There's no doubt.
I'll even drive over there. I'm not that far away.
There's no doubt. There is no doubt. So all of the chat and the chatter, guys, is so just so great. I wanted to talk about holidays and birthdays. Just real quick, how do you handle holidays and birthdays when you don't have, I mean, for me, it was Christmas. Everybody's got a kid sitting on their lap, opening presents. And that's when, daggers to my heart kind of thing for years and years. How do you handle holidays and birthdays when you know that child is not yours?
I left the other household, and that's what my husband did as well. We kind of let her take the lead with the kids. And if we got invited and included, it was great, but it didn't happen a lot. So holidays, I mean, there's the every other holiday kind of cycling, and you learn that Christmas doesn't have to be actually on Christmas Day. Thanksgiving doesn't actually have to be on Thanksgiving Day. The holidays are about spending time with family, and it's whatever day it is, and you learn to be flexible. So does it hurt? Yes. Is it brutal? Yes. Do you get included? No. Do you get presents and get, acknowledged? No. Do you do a lot of the work? Yes. Are you the one that fills all the stockings and does everything? Yes. And you just have to learn to be okay with it. I think at the end of the day, you have to make a choice. I chose to be married to this man. Granted, I did not realize how much it was going to hurt my heart and how hard it was going to be at certain times. But at the end of the day, the good outweighs the frustration. So I chose, and I am learning to navigate these waters much better than I used to.
We had a question. These questions, y'all, are awesome. Did you live in a new home together or move into your spouse's house?
Oh,
We always lived somewhere different.
for 6 months, we had to. No
Okay.
bueno. Would never recommend that.
Yeah, that I moved into Craig's house that his ex-wife had lived in, and we lived in there for about a year or so. But that was it. And every house has been here. And again, I know that my situation is very weird because I'm thinking about this house that we've been in for 9 years. The first person that showed up when we were moving with a huge plate of sandwiches and soft drinks and all that kind of stuff was my husband's ex-wife, because she was like, you got a new house. And, that just,
Wow.
it's making me think when this is all over, I need to call her and go, love you, love you, love you. So we had some other things kind of about the interaction with the ex-wives, and I know we've kind of talked about that, but one thing that I'm realizing is that when there's so many people that the three of us are very lucky because we have found each other, and we've done vacations together at this point. I mean, it is something great happens, we're on the phone. Something really crappy happens and we're on the phone, and we've really been very lucky with that. But what advice or tips would you give to people that are on this call that have maybe not found, either a group? And I'm going to talk about the Facebook group in a minute. I'm going to pop that logo back up. But what advice would you give to people to finding that? I mean, we've got people of all, we've got somebody who messaged me privately and said that she's LGBTQ, like she's a lesbian, and she's like, I'm trying to find people in my life, that adds another level. Like, what advice would you give to people trying to find partnerships and stuff, support groups?
Yeah. I have two suggestions. And one is, if you're not necessarily that outgoing, or if you don't have the capability or the means or the time, the first thing was an exercise, and I don't recall if we did it at your house, Sandy, during Reignite, or if it was just part of the Gateway Women and the Rocking the Life Unexpected book, but actually doing the exercise where you do spend time and you think about all of the women, friends, family members, acquaintances, neighbors who are in your situation or similarly situated. When you sit down to think about the women in your life who are childless or stepmoms or both, and you start reading the names, and it may just be somebody you're working with, it may be an aunt, there are so many reasons why people are in this childless not by choice circumstance, that there are more of us than we realize. And I think that's the first step, because I did make some connections with some of those people that I kind of just glanced over in my day-to-day life. But once you're really intentional about, oh, we have this in common. The second thing I did, because I was just darn sick and tired of not having anybody in West Michigan, is I started a meetup group, which then became a Facebook group. And it was strictly for step parents, but there were a lot of us that were childless not by choice within that group. So those are two things locally, because obviously everything online and with the internet, Facebook groups and whatnot, wonderful. But obviously if you don't have time or the money or the desire to get out, there's something for you for sure.
Yeah.
For me, I had to learn how to speak up and not be afraid to talk about. I mean, I was going through so many different emotions and trying to find out my role, going through miscarriages and trying to figure out, am I a mom? Like, and going through that own journey. But being able to speak up about my story and not being so embarrassed and not, letting go of the self-imposed shame that I was carrying for so many years. I don't really know why I did, but I think when you don't feel like you can talk, you go inward, at least for me, a lot. And again, I tell myself a lot of stories. I'm gotten a lot much better about that. But being able to speak up and talk about how I, what my story is without shame, and like this is my badge. This is what this is what I'm doing. It allowed me to be able to open up, to be able to find other people. I mean, even with the three of us, we're all stepmoms, but we all have three very different stories. And so I think being open that we don't have to have a stepmom, the child of a stepmom that's exactly like you. That's the
Yeah.
other thing. It's like, I think you want to fit these puzzles together and go, well, you wanted to have children, but you just couldn't. Over you miscarried, but you miscarried at this month and instead of this month. It doesn't matter. I think at the end of the day, it's connections, and it's about that heart connection. And the three of us were able to have a beautiful heart connection, and we've got a beautiful friendship. Do you want to say the last thing, that little notepad thing you have, Kara? The little thing you wrote down?
Oh, yeah.
The notepad or the picture?
Well,
I think
that's
she
you,
just
but
wrote the fab.
Yeah, so I have that.
and so do you want to say what it means?
Well, you can, because you came up with it.
You came up with
Well, so one of the things that we did, and it's been fun that it's stayed along, but we came up with this acronym called FAB, which is To Healing and Beyond.
and she has a little.
We had like a little
Yeah.
we got everybody in the group to kind of do that, and I don't even know where that came from. I think allowing yourself
It
to
was
be
one of your things you had way too much. Yeah.
But I was in an environment where I actually felt heard and I could let go.
Did.
Just we had a blast with it. But the
It
goal
was
of
awesome.
all of us is to have, to healing and beyond. It's not just to heal, but it's like being able to have this camaraderie and this friendship between us. But now that we're kind of entering in some of these different stages, it's beyond the kids are graduating soon, they're getting older, but we want to thrive for the rest of our lives and not be in that. It's in the healing space.
That is exactly it. And I think it is 2:00. I wanted to throw some resources real quick to all of you. Thank you for joining us. I was worried we weren't going to be able to fill an hour, and I want to talk for 5 more with all of you. Your questions are great. Your comments are great. Really encourage you to continue this discussion. The Childless Life Facebook group is the group that I started about 5 or 6 years ago. We've got almost 3,000 women from around the world, and it's got some chat on it, let me tell you. Gateway Women, I know y'all were talking. Gateway Women, that's Jody's group, Jody Day's group, and there's not enough amazing things you can say about Jody Day. She has Gateway Women, and she's got meetup locations for all over the world. And then Stephanie Joy Phillips, who started World Childless Week, and she's really the one that facilitated the opportunity for all of us to get together. So follow World Childless Week throughout the year, because it's around all the year long, but it gets much louder in September. So thank you for joining. Stephanie, I'm going to turn it back over to you. I don't know if you need to jump back in, but truly appreciate this discussion and you guys being a part of this, and to healing and beyond. We're getting there. Thank you.